Hey there, this is my video for Element 11. This is my video reflection, and basically it's all about those pre-tests and the post-tests and the scores. And so in this one, then yeah, I will go over my pre-tests, my post-tests. I'll talk about the interval of time in between them. I'll talk about the type of instruction and practice that happened in between that pre-test and post-test, and just kind of some other thoughts that I have on the whole thing. So to begin with, I chose three different learning targets. One was a cognitive skill set, one was a reading proficiency scale, and one was a math proficiency scale. And so I chose kind of, I wanted to choose one from each area, and definitely wanted to include a cognitive skill, just to kind of play with it, to see how it worked with the pre-test, post-test, and lessons and all that stuff. And it was interesting. It was fun to do, and ongoing. To begin with, let's just jump right into that cognitive and metacognitive skill set one. The one that I chose for this was working in groups. It was a life skill set for the fifth grade for level 5, and most of my students started off with a pre-test score of 1.5, meaning that we talked to them about working in groups, and they kind of knew about working in groups, but ultimately they didn't know the specifics of it. It's like they'd been kind of trained in it, but they hadn't been formally trained in it. And so ultimately, you can see the difference. It was a really good growth for almost every kid in class, and most of the kids, like I said, ended up here with a score of 3s. Had a couple here who didn't totally do it, but that was just 2 kids. And so the amount of time in between the pre-test and the post-test here was about a month. Nothing too huge. Nothing. It wasn't a very long unit. There's a bunch of different cognitive skills, and so it's one of those funny things where I could test on this probably all year long, and this is something that obviously isn't one that you just work on and then forget about. It's something that the students are going to need to keep doing. And so while yes, right now currently on my assessment, my post assessment, they were a score 3. These are skills that they need to continue to work at. I guess by looking at this and by scoring it this way, I kind of feel like they are proficient at the knowledge of working in groups, but the practice of working in groups then is something that isn't going to necessarily, I don't think you'll be able to say at any point in time you are completely proficient, because obviously it's one of those skills that you need to maintain and that can decline if you don't continue to practice a lot of the active listening and the positive suggestions and contributions to your group, like we worked on in class. So what did we do for this? The practice that happened in this was, I was working in groups, and so there's a bunch of different things that we did, a bunch of different lessons that we taught. One of them was on Nearpod about teamwork, and they had to develop a feeder for a cat feeder, and talk about it. And we also went over did lessons on active listening. We created SOPs around this, and then every time we also did this in conjunction with literacy that we were doing. Obviously they're doing group work throughout the day, so this gives us ample time to practice. And so we would bring it up, and we would. It was fun because we're doing let's say we're doing a unit right now. We just finished up Tale of Despereaux book, and the students were working in groups, and stopped to talk and asked the kids about what learning target they're working on, and half the kids mentioned that they were working on the literacy learning target, and the other half of the kids had mentioned that they were working on the cognitive life skill learning target. So that was really cool to see kind of both of those meshed at the same time, and see the students understand that, hey, there's more than one thing going on here, that it's not just literacy, or it's not just life skills. So that was neat, and neat to see, and definitely was a good one. I really enjoyed doing that. The two of the other ones, one was RP03. This is one that I've talked about previously with this HRT program, this was just the level 6 ratios that we did. This is the one that Guillermo was talking about, how he did and his thoughts on the whole thing. The pretest on that one was all zeros for the most part. Guillermo knew some vocabulary, and the other kid, so the post tests, everybody passed. It was, it's a smaller group, 6 kids. So it's easier to affect some change, but at the same time, they do a lot of independent work, and so it's a good group. This group works really well together. And so what happened in this one was there was about, I want to say, 25 different lessons on ratios and unit rates, and that was all Engage New York. And the time frame in that was, this was about a month and a half, even longer. So this was a pretty hefty learning target, hefty pre-test, post-test, but good effect. Everybody did pretty darn well on that one. So I don't really need to talk about that much more. And R102, which is themes, and I gotta fix that. R102 is themes and stories, and so you'll see the pretest data showed some, a good handful of students who had proficiency on this one. And this one, honestly, and I'll talk about it probably at the next video. It just I don't so much find my post-test or even my pre-test scores on this one. The reliability, I think, is not so high. I don't know if that's a result of my test questions, the ones that I have for this. I don't know if it's a result of the material that we were using. To me, I think there's so many different factors that go into something like this that once you get enough of those variables in there, that the reliability just drops. And so I would much rather on this, especially on most of my literacy, on most learning targets, as a matter of fact, but on most literacy learning targets and proficiency scales, I prefer to kind of sit down and talk with the kids, and I also prefer to let them come up with their assessments rather than do a universal blanket post-test. For me, these are not their final grades. These are just one more grade, one more brick in the wall for them and for their evidences. And so the kids did very well. I was excited to see that a bunch of them went for the optional score 4, and some of them attained that, which was really cool. What we did within theme, we started out with, I always like to teach theme with children's books, and I got young kids, and so we sat down and we read the Pout Pout Fish, and we read the Little Blue Truck, and those books are great for talking about themes. And we did some fun stuff. We did a snowball fight where you crumple up a piece of paper and throw it. We did a lot of partner work, shared work, group work, and then slowly started introducing. There's a great book that I really like for using this, which is it's Notice and Note, and they talk a lot about in that book. This book, the people who wrote it, I think they took, I want to say, over 100 different most widely used books they did one for elementary, and they did also for secondary, and took a look at those and talked about common threads, common themes between the two, and came up with these signposts, they call them. And so, for example, 2 of the signposts that we use, and something I introduced to the students, was one's called Words of the Wiser, and that's where at some point in the book, main character or somebody receives some advice from somebody who is wiser, usually older, somebody who is wiser, anyways. And when you see somebody speaking and they're giving you see them speaking to a wiser person, you stop, which is the sign thing. You got to stop, you have to read the sign and find out what exactly is the lesson that's being taught. What is the main character taking away from that wiser person? And generally, in all the literature that they've looked at, that is linking to the theme. So you're going to get some theme from this wiser person. And so we introduced that. The other one is this aha moment that throughout the book, if you get to a point where a main character understands something or a main character suddenly realizes something, that light bulb moment goes off, aha, that is also going to link back to the theme. So we taught those, and the kids, we taught those with several different texts. We have a lot of different shared texts in this one that we read, and ultimately the kids ended up having to unpack Taylor Despero all on their own and find the aha moments and the Words of the Wiser, and come up with their own themes and theme statements and topics and summary. So that's where we went with this one. Like I said, the pretest was on an article from Scholastic Storyworks called "The Ghost of Spectre Elementary." It's a good story, and the post test was on another story from Scholastic Storyworks called "Dog People." And I like both texts. They both had good themes and multiple themes that were present in there. I just didn't necessarily find. I just didn't like the test. I don't like the questions. I don't like. I would rather them just be able to explain and pick a text and talk to me about it rather than do this. And so maybe that's my fault. Maybe my pre-tests and post-tests, maybe I was trying to force it a little bit, I think, for the HRT rather than do it. Although the pre-test is one that I've done in the past, so maybe it's the post-test that I wasn't so happy about. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just getting to be an old man and I'm not happy about anything. That's not true. So anyways, that's kind of where it was at, and how much time we spent on the R102 was, I want to say 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks max. We didn't spend more than 4 weeks on this one. So anyways, that's that. Thank you.